The grand hall of the alien empire was filled with glowing torches and banners of silver and red, high above the throne, shone like a jewel, and on that throne sat the princess of the Karen race. Her eyes were sharp, her voice louder than the drums that shook the walls. She looked down at the crowd gathered below, and her smile was filled with pride and cruelty. She raised her hand, and silence fell. Then she spoke, her words cutting through the air like blades. Humans, she said with laughter, are weak, fragile, and worthless. They cannot fight, they cannot lead, and they cannot stand beside true warriors. They were only allowed here because of pity, not because of power. The crowd of alien nobles cheered, clapping their clawed hands against their armored chests. Some shouted in agreement, others laughed loudly. The hall was filled with their voices, but among them stood a single figure who did not laugh, a man, simple armor, a human warrior. His face was calm, but his fists were clenched at his side. His silence was heavier than the noise around him. The princess's mocking eyes found him. She tilted her head and smirked. Look at him, she said, pointing at the human. He stands here as if he is equal. He does not know his place. Perhaps he believes he has strength. Perhaps he believes humans have honor. But I will show all of you that they are nothing. The crowd roared. Again the human did not answer. His lips pressed into a line, and his eyes did not leave the princess. There was no anger in his face, only a strange calm that made a few in the crowd uneasy. He was like a sword still in its sheath, silent but dangerous. The princess stood from her throne and began to walk down the stairs. Her long cloak dragged across the floor, the jewels on her crown shining under the firelight. She came closer to the human, and the guards tightened their hold on their spears. The crowd leaned forward, eager to see her humiliate him. You came here as a guest, she said coldly, but you will leave as an example. Tomorrow you will fight in the arena, and the empire will watch. They will see with their own eyes how weak your kind truly is. They will see you crawl, and they will know that humans are nothing more than dust under the boots of the Karen. Her words fell like stones. The nobles shouted in excitement. The arena, they cried. The sound shook the walls of the grand hall. Still the human did not move. He bowed his head slightly, but his eyes never broke away from the princess's face. That silent stare made her pause for a moment, though she quickly covered it with another cruel smile. She leaned closer and whispered, so only he could hear, when you fall, all humans will fall with you. The human lifted his chin. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall like thunder. We do not fall, he said. His simple words were not loud, but they echoed deep inside the ears of everyone present. For the first time the hall grew silent. The princess's smile trembled. The crowd shifted, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken back to her like that, especially not a human. Her pride burned hotter, and her anger turned into fire. She snapped her fingers, and the guards stepped forward, their spears pointed at the human, ready to drag him away. But he did not resist. He let them take him, his head still high, his eyes still calm. The crowd whispered among themselves. Some laughed nervously, others frowned in thought. Something about this human was different. He was not like the weak servants they were used to. The princess returned to her throne, sitting tall as if she had already won. She raised her hand again and shouted, tomorrow we will see the truth. Tomorrow the Worthless human will be broken before your eyes, the hall roared once more. But her voice shook just a little, as if a shadow of doubt had touched her heart. The guards led the human out of the hall and into the dark corridors below. His footsteps echoed against the stone floor. His hands were bound, but his spirit was not. Every step he took was steady, as if he was walking toward destiny, not death. That night, the Empire celebrated, believing they would watch the humans defeat, but whispers had already begun to spread. Whispers about the calm in his eyes, whispers about the words he had spoken. Some began to wonder, what if the princess was wrong? What if humans were not weak? And in the shadows of the cold prison, the human warrior sat alone. His body was still, but his mind was fire. He thought of the arena. He thought of the beasts and warriors he would face. He thought of proving the princess wrong. He thought of showing the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. Tomorrow would not be his end. Tomorrow would be the beginning. The morning sun rose over the empire, its light turning the sky a harsh red. The city was alive with noise, drums echoing through the streets as citizens marched toward the great arena. The smell of smoke, sweat, and excitement filled the air. It was a day of spectacle, and the people craved blood. The arena itself was a massive circle of stone carved into the earth. Centuries ago, its walls were high, lined with banners of the Karen race. The seats were packed with aliens of every kind, nobles in jeweled robes, soldiers in armor, and merchants eager to bet on the fights. At the very top, under a golden canopy, sat the princess, her eyes blazing with cruel pride. She raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Her voice carried over the arena. Today, she declared, we will show the truth. The human who stands before you is weak. He dares to believe in strength, but he will not leave this place alive. Watch closely, for his shame will be the shame of his people. The crowd roared, chanting, shame, shame. Their voices shook the walls, echoing like thunder. The gates on one side creaked open, and the human warrior was pushed forward. His hands were unbound, but chains still clung to his wrists. His armor was simple, nothing compared to the bright steel of the Karen, yet his steps were steady, his head high. His eyes swept across the arena, taking in every detail. Some in the crowd booed, others laughed. They threw dust and scraps of food at him, trying to break his spirit, but he did not flinch, not even once. His silence was louder than their voices, and it unsettled them more than anger could. The princess smirked and leaned forward on her throne, her crown caught the sunlight. Release the first test, she commanded. The gates opposite the human opened, and a beast the size of a cart charged forward, its body covered in black scales, its mouth dripping with poison. The creature roared, shaking the ground as it ran. The crowd cheered wildly, certain the fight would end quickly. The human stood his ground, his hand tightened on the short blade given to him. Nothing fancy, just a soldier's weapon. The beast lunged, its jaws wide. The crowd gasped, waiting for the human to be torn apart, but in a blur he moved. His steps were light, his body low. The blade slashed across the beast's neck, and in a spray of dark blood the monster fell silent. The arena grew quiet. For a moment no one breathed. The human wiped the blade against his arm and stood tall, his face calm, his eyes steady. He looked not like prey, but like a hunter. The princess clenched her jaw, her smile faltering for a heartbeat. She quickly raised her hand again. Send the next. She snapped. 2 warriors entered the arena, each towering over the human. Their armor gleamed, their weapons were long and heavy. They laughed as they approached him, circling like wolves. Break him, one said, make him crawl. The other replied. The fight began. The human dodged the first swing, the ground cracking where the heavy blade struck. He moved fast, striking when they least expected. His blade cut across one warrior's leg, forcing him to stumble. The second lunged, but the human rolled aside, rising with his sword at the enemy's throat. A swift strike ended the first, and a brutal clash ended the second. Blood stained the sand. Crowd erupted, half in shock, half in awe. Some cheered, some shouted in anger. They had come to see a human broken, but instead they saw a human who refused to fall. The princess's nails dug into her throne, her voice hissed through the air. More, send more. The gates opened again, and 3 warriors marched out, their weapons dripping with fire and steel. The crowd roared, hoping numbers would crush him. At last, the human breathed slowly, sweat on his brow, his arms ached, but his spirit burned hotter than ever. The fight was chaos. Sparks flew, blades clashed, the sand turned red with blood. The human moved like water flowing, striking, surviving. He was cut, bruised and bleeding, but still he stood. One by one the warriors fell, until only the human remained, his chest rising and falling with ragged breath. The crowd no longer laughed. They stared, their voices caught in their throats. Some whispered in disbelief. He fights like 10 men, one said. He cannot be human, another gasped. Princess's face twisted in anger. Her voice cracked as she shouted, this is not victory, this is luck. He cannot last, he will fall, he must fall. But in the arena, the human lifted his blade. Once more, he turned to face the princess, his body shaking but his eyes like fire. He did not speak, but his stare alone was louder than any words. The crowd felt it, the nobles felt it. Even the princess felt it. This was no weak creature, this was a warrior. And as the sun reached its highest point, burning over the bloody sand, the arena that was meant to shame the human became something else. It became the place where his legend began. The arena floor was red with blood. The smell of iron and smoke filled the air. The crowd had stopped laughing. Their voices were now whispers. Their eyes were locked on the human warrior who still stood, his blade heavy in his hand, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. High above, the princess sat on her golden throne. Her smile was gone. Her hands gripped the arms of her seat. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp with disbelief and anger. This was not the scene she had promised her people. She had promised humiliation, but instead they watched strength. She could feel the weight of every whisper pressing against her pride. The drums boomed again, a deep thunder rolling across the arena. The gates at the far end began to rise. Chains rattled, the sound echoing through the silence. The crowd leaned forward, their breath held. The human lifted his chin, his grip tightened on the blade. He knew this was not finished. From the shadows of the gate, a beast unlike any before appeared. Its body was massive, its skin armored with bone-like plates. Its eyes glowed with green fire, and its roar shook the very stone beneath their feet. The creature's breath was hot and foul, dripping venom onto the sand. The nobles gasped, some even stepped back. They knew this was not a test animal. This was a war beast, one meant to destroy armies. The princess rose to her feet, her voice sharp as a blade. This ends. Now she shouted, let the human be crushed. Let his blood be a lesson to all who forget their place. The crowd echoed her words, though their tears carried less confidence than before. The human stood still, his body rocked, his arms shook, but his eyes did not waver. He watched the beast circle, its tail smashing against the ground. The dust rose around them, making the air heavy. He knew one mistake would mean death. The beast lunged, jaws wide, teeth dripping with venom. The human rolled aside, the ground shaking where the jaws struck. He rose quickly, his blade flashing in the sunlight. A strike cut across the beast's shoulder. Sparks flew. The crowd gasped for the first time. Blood spilled from the monster's armored skin. The princess's lips pressed into a hard line. She clapped her hands, and the drums grew louder. The beast roared in rage, charging again. This time its tail whipped forward, smashing against the human side. He staggered, pain shooting through his ribs. The crowd shouted, half in excitement, half in fear, but he did not fall. His eyes burned with fire. He gritted his teeth and forced his body forward. His blade slashed across the beast's leg. The cut was deep. The monster roared, stumbling. The ground trembled as its massive body struggled to balance. The first strike had landed. A true wound, not luck, not chance, but skill. The crowd erupted in cries. Some cheered wildly, others shouted in fury. The arena was no longer filled with laughter, it was filled with shock. The human breathed hard, sweat dripping into his eyes. He could feel the pain in his side, but he forced it aside. His spirit burned brighter than the sun. He lifted his blade again, ready. The beast circled, limping now, its green eyes filled with rage and fear. The princess slammed her hand against the throne. Her crown shook as she shouted, fight. Crush him, do not fall to this weak creature. But her voice no longer carried the same power. There was doubt in her tone, a tremor of fear that even she could not hide. The human moved again. He did not wait for the beast. He charged. His blade rose high. His cry echoed across the arena. The strike came down with the weight of his spirit, cutting deep into the monster's neck. The beast roared, its body thrashing. Dust and blood filled the air. The crowd stood to their feet, unable to look away. For a long moment the battle raged. The beast tried again and again to crush him. Its tail swung, its jaws snapped, but the human moved with precision. Each cut was sharper, each strike more certain, until at last the beast collapsed onto the bloody sand. Its glowing eyes dimmed, its body still. Silence fell across the arena. Not a voice, not a cheer. The only sound was the heavy breath of the human warrior. He stood over the beast, his blade dripping, his face covered in sweat and blood, his body trembling but unbroken. Then the silence broke. A single cheer rose from the back, then another, and soon the arena shook, not with laughter, but with cries of awe. Warrior, warrior. They shouted, human, human. Princess's face turned pale, her pride cracked like glass. She clenched her fists, her heart racing. She had wanted shame, but she had given birth to legend. The whispers around her throne grew louder. He is no slave, someone said. He is a warrior, another added. The human lifted his blade and pointed it at the princess. Not a word left his lips, but the meaning was clear. He would not bow, not break, not fall. His first strike had not only cut the beast It had cut the very pride of the empire. The princess sat frozen, her mocking words from yesterday now haunting her. She had said humans were worthless, but in front of her, before the entire empire, one human had proved her wrong. And it was only the beginning. The sun dipped low over the arena, casting long shadows across the sand. Dust swirled from the fallen beast, mixing with the smoke of torches. The crowd was restless, whispers rising and falling. Like the wind, they could not believe what they had just seen, a human standing alive, victorious against a monster designed to kill. The princess remained on her throne, her hands gripping the golden arms tightly. Her eyes burned with anger and disbelief. Every muscle in her body screamed to act, to punish, to reclaim her honor. But fear whispered in her mind, fear that she had underestimated him. From the shadows behind the gates, more figures emerged, soldiers of the empire, their armor blackened with smoke, their weapons glinting in the dying sunlight. They were trained killers bred to crush any opposition. Their orders were simple: eliminate the human before he inspired rebellion. The human did not flinch. His eyes scanned the arena, calculating, waiting, the ground beneath. His feet was uneven, scarred from the first fight. His body ached, his muscles burned, but his spirit roared louder than the pain. He would not flee, he would not beg, he would not break. First soldier stepped forward, a long spear in hand. The crowd tensed, sensing the danger. The human held his sword high, his breath steady. The soldier lunged, sharp metal aimed for his chest. With a twist of his body, the human dodged, his blade slashing across the soldier's arm. The metal screamed as it met the edge. The soldier stumbled but quickly recovered, his eyes wide with shock. This human moved like a storm, unstoppable. The second soldier attacked, faster this time, a pair of curved blades flashing in the sunlight. The human blocked one strike, parried the other, his body a rhythm of motion, each movement precise, each breath controlled. The crowd gasped, some leaned forward, unable to tear their eyes away. The princess rose, her voice cutting through the chaos. Enough, stop this madness, she shouted. But the soldiers did not listen. They had been trained to obey, not question. They attacked together, a wave of steel and fury. The human's mind raced. He could feel their strength, their speed, their intent. But he had something more, something no one else in the arena had. He had courage, a heart that refused to bend. He moved like water slipping between blades, dodging, striking, each movement a spark of fire against the darkness. The soldiers began to falter, their confidence shattered. They had expected a weak human, easily broken. But this one was different, stronger than any of them. His strikes were fast, clean, each one landing with power, each one telling the world that humans were not to be dismissed. The crowd's whispers turned into shouts, then into cries of awe. He fights like a god, someone yelled. The human cannot be stopped. Another shouted. Even the empire's noble stared, witty, their arrogance cracking, their certainty fading. The princess clenched her teeth, her mind raced. How could this be? She had mocked humanity, called them weak, worthless, and pitiful. Yet here was proof that she had been wrong. One human alone had defied her empire, and shattered her illusions. The human pressed forward, moving between the soldiers like a shadow, his blade cutting through their formation. Metal clashed, sparks flying. The sound of steel echoed, a rhythm of war. The Soldiers tried to regroup, but each strike from the human forced them back. Step by step, then he saw her, to the princess standing too close to the edge, her expression a mix of fury and fear. She had thought herself untouchable above the fight, but her throne was empty, her guards defeated, and the human's eyes locked onto hers. He did not smile, he did not gloat. His gaze was steady like a flame burning bright. The crowd hushed, sensing the tension. The human raised his blade, not at the soldiers, not at the crowd, but at the throne, at the symbol of arrogance, at the princess who had laughed at his kind. His stance was calm, his body tense, ready to strike if needed. The princess's lips trembled. She realized something terrifying. This was no ordinary human. This was someone who would not bend, who would not kneel, who would challenge everything she believed, her pride, her empire, even her life were in his hands. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The arena held its breath. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long. The first true crack in the empire appeared, and it began with the courage of one human. Soldiers stepped back, unsure. Their leader was no longer their focus, their orders meaningless, their hearts shaken by what they had witnessed. The humans' fire had ignited something they could not extinguish. The princess sank back slightly into her throne, her mind spinning, her anger growing, but for the first time she hesitated, unsure of what to do, unsure if she could win, unsure if humans were truly as weak as she had believed. And in that hesitation, the human's presence became a shadow of inevitability. His fire, his courage, his defiance spread through the arena like wildfire. The crowd watched, mesmerized. The empire's soldiers unsure, the princess's laughter silenced. The human's fire was not just in his blade, it was in his heart, in every breath, in every strike. It burned through fear, through doubt, through the lies of an empire. The princess had mocked humanity, but now she could see one warrior could change everything, and that change was coming. The arena was silent now, the echoes of clashing steel fading into the tense air. The soldiers stood frozen, their confidence shattered by the human skill. Their leader, once proud and commanding, now hesitated, uncertain what to do next. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts pounding. They had never seen courage like this, not from a human, not from anyone. The princess sat on her throne, her fingers digging into the golden arms. Her mind raced. She had ruled with power, with fear, with superiority, yet none of it mattered now. None of it could touch the human standing in her arena. He was alive, strong, unbroken, and his fire was not just in his blade. It was in his heart, his soul, something no army could crush. She stood abruptly, her long robes flowing behind her like storm. "Stop this," she shouted, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension, but even her words trembled, slightly betraying her fear. "Surrender," she commanded, her pride refusing to let her admit she was wrong. "Bow to me, human, and your life may be spared." The human looked up, his eyes steady, unwavering. His chest rose and fell with calm breath. He did not bow, he did not plead, he only smiled slightly, a faint curve of his lips. Crowd gasped, whispers spread through the arena like wildfire. He won't bow. He dares to defy her. The human is fearless. The princess's anger flared hotter than any fire in the arena. She had mocked humanity, called them weak, worthless, pitiful, yet here was one who stood taller than her tallest towers, stronger than her fiercest soldiers. She had believed her empire was untouchable, her word law, her power absolute, but now doubt crept in, gnawing at the edges of her mind. She gestured sharply and the remaining soldiers charged, their weapons aimed not at the human's chest, but at his legs, trying to take away his strength. But the human moved like a shadow, faster than they could see, his sword slicing, parrying, deflecting each motion. Precise, controlled, a deadly dance of survival. The crowd erupted in awe, cheering, shouting, unable to look away. Even the nobles of the empire, who had never known fear, stared wide-eyed, their mouths open in disbelief. He was only one human, yet he had become a storm, unstoppable, unyielding. The princess stepped down from her throne, her own hands gripping a blade, long and sharp, her eyes locked onto the human. She had been a master of fear, of manipulation, of power, but here, face to face with this human, she felt her strength falter. Her mind told her to strike, to punish, to show him who was supreme, but her heart trembled, the fire in her chest wavering. The human did not attack, did not move toward her. He only waited, his stance calm, his eyes fixed on hers. It was a challenge, silent but louder than any battle cry. You mocked us, his gaze seemed to say. You called us weak. Yet here I stand, stronger than your fear. Her lips tightened, her pride screaming. She had to respond. She had to show the world she was not defeated. But how could she fight someone who had already won hearts, who had already broken her illusions? Her soldiers faltered, unsure of whom to obey, their training useless against courage they could not understand. Then the human took a single step forward, slow, deliberate, each footfall echoing in the arena. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. Even the wind seemed to pause. The princess raised her blade, ready to strike. Her mind spun. She remembered every insult, every sneer she had given humanity, every word now mocking her own arrogance. The human stopped a few paces away, raising his sword not at her but at the ground, a gesture of peace or a test she could not tell, and it unnerved her more than fear. He was powerful, yes, but he was also controlled, wise, fearless, and deliberate. Her empire had taught her strength, but courage, that was something she had never mastered. For the first time, doubt replaced anger. The princess hesitated, her chest heaving. She realized that her rules, her commands, her throne meant nothing here, not against someone who fought with heart, who risked everything for honor, for justice, for truth. The human spoke, his voice carrying clearly across the arena, calm, steady. You mocked my kind, you called us worthless, but I stand to prove that one person can change everything. That strength is not measured by armies or crowns, but by courage, by heart, by choice. The crowd erupted in cheers. The soldiers froze, unsure how to act. The princess's hands shook, her mind spinning, her voice caught in her throat. She realized that this was the moment that would define her reign, her life. Would she continue to mock, to fight, to cling to lies, or would she accept the truth that humanity could rise, could stand, could conquer fear itself? The human lowered his sword slightly, a subtle invitation, a test of character. The princess stared, her mind torn, pride battled with reality, anger with awe. Her empire was strong, yes, but this one human was stronger in ways she had never imagined. And in that tension, the arena seemed to hold its breath. the world waiting to see what the princess would choose. Would she continue to fight a losing battle, or would she finally face the reckoning she had earned? The first true crack in her arrogance had appeared, and it was all because of a human who refused to bow. The emperor's chambers were cold, dark, and silent. His advisors crowded around him, their faces pale, eyes wide with fear. The news had arrived moments ago, carried by a trembling messenger. Your Highness, the human has defeated the princess's guards and stands undefeated. In the arena, the emperor's hand tightened around the arm of his throne. Knuckles white, his eyes blazed with fury, a storm threatening to erupt. Impossible, he whispered almost to himself. No human can stand against us, none can defy the empire and survive. But the truth could not be ignored. The reports were detailed, precise, and terrifying. Each soldier who had challenged the human had fallen not through weakness, but through unmatched skill, courage, and heart. The princess herself had nearly faltered, her arrogance broken in front of the entire arena. The advisors shuffled nervously, unsure what to say. Your Highness, the people, they are witnessing this. They are seeing one human stand against our might. They are inspired. One brave minister dared to speak, voice trembling. They may start to question our rule. The emperor's eyes narrowed, burning with rage. His mind raced, trying to grasp how a single human could shake an empire built on fear, obedience, and power. He had conquered countless worlds, crushed countless rebellions. Yet this human threatened not with armies but with courage, with heart, with defiance. Meanwhile, in the arena, the human stood tall, surveying the crowd, the soldiers, the princess. Each face told a story. Fear mixed with awe, doubt mixed with hope. He felt the weight of their eyes upon him, yet he did not falter. He had faced danger before, had risked everything, but never for glory, never for fame, only for justice, for truth, for honor. The princess stepped back, her legs trembling, her mind a storm of confusion, anger, and admiration. She had never expected this, never imagined that a human could move her so, could challenge her so completely. Her guards were gone, her plans in ruins, yet the human did not attack her. He had no need, no desire. He only stood, a silent declaration of strength. The emperor's anger turned to paranoia, his mind filled with visions of revolt, rebellion, and shame. He could not allow one human to inspire the masses, could not allow his empire to see weakness. He called forth his generals, his war machines, his secret enforcers. Bring me this human, he commanded, voice echoing with deadly authority. I want him captured, broken, and shown to all as a warning. Back in the arena, the tension grew. The crowd sensed something, a shift in the air, a storm approaching. The human knew he could not stand alone against the emperor's wrath for long. He had already challenged the princess, had already shown that courage mattered more than fear, but now the stakes had grown even higher. The empire itself was moving against him, a force far greater than any he had faced before. The princess's eyes softened. She had seen the truth, and it frightened her more than anything else. She had mocked humanity, dismissed them as weak, worthless, insignificant. Yet here was one who proved her wrong, one who held his head high while facing impossible odds. She felt a strange pull, a mix of respect, fear, and something she had never known, humility. The soldiers who remained in the arena looked at each other, their confidence shattered, their training, their loyalty, their discipline, all meaningless against this human they had been taught to obey, to conquer, to intimidate, yet now they felt small, powerless, unsure, and afraid. The air was thick with tension, every heartbeat echoing like a drum, every breath held in anticipation. Outside the palace, whispers spread like wildfire. The human stands alone, he is fearless. Could one person really change everything? The citizens watched from windows, from rooftops, from alleys, eyes wide with disbelief, hearts pounding with hope. The empire had always been untouchable, yet now one human had shown them a different truth. The emperor's rage boiled over, his face red with fury. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. Mobilize the enforcers, the guards, the soldiers, everyone who can move. Will hunt this human down. We cannot let him live. We cannot allow him to inspire. But even as he spoke, doubt crept in, a shadow of fear he could not control. What if courage truly mattered more than power? What if his empire was not as unshakable as he believed? The human remained calm, sensing the approaching storm. He had no illusions about the empire, no thoughts of victory. Yet he only knew that he had done what was right, that he had stood when others would kneel, and sometimes he thought that was enough to change the world. The princess, for the first time in her life, stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. I see now that I was wrong. Human, you have shown me a truth I could not imagine, that strength is not only in armies but in heart, in courage, in defiance. The human turned, meeting her gaze, his expression calm, a faint smile on his lips. Then you understand, he said softly, that one person can change everything, even an empire. The arena held its breath as the first cracks of rebellion, doubt, and hope spread through the crowd, through the soldiers, through the empire itself. And far away in his dark chambers, the emperor clenched his fists, knowing that the storm had only just begun. The empire shakes, and the world begins to listen. The air was tense, thick with fear, hope, and the scent of dust and smoke. The empire's fleet gathered in the skies above the arena, countless ships armed with weapons designed to crush any resistance. The human stood alone, small against the enormous force. Yet his eyes burned with determination, courage shining brighter than any army. The princess hovered nearby, her hands trembling, her mind racing with doubt, fear, and admiration. She had mocked humans once, laughed at their weakness, and dismissed them as insignificant. Yet, now standing so close to this human, seeing his calm, unwavering presence, she realized her mistake. The truth was undeniable. One human could defy even the mightiest empire. The emperor appeared on the balcony above the arena, his face twisted with fury, rage, and disbelief. He could not comprehend how a single human could rally the crowd, shake his soldiers, and expose the cracks in his empire. You will kneel before me, he shouted, voice echoing across the city, or your life will end, and the world will learn the cost of defiance. The human did not flinch, his gaze meeting the emperor's directly, steady, unbroken. I will not kneel, he said calmly, voice carrying across the arena. I stand for truth, for courage, for those who cannot stand themselves. I will not be afraid. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading like fire through the citizens. He speaks for us. He dares to defy the emperor. He is brave. Soldiers shifted uneasily, unsure whether to obey. The emperor or heed the human's courage. The princess stepped forward, placing herself beside the human, her voice loud, clear. He is right, father. The empire cannot rule through fear alone. Courage, honor, and truth matter more than threats and weapons. Listen to him. The emperor and LT Unk and GT's face turned red with anger, veins bulging. You dare, he began, but stopped as a soldier knelt before him, head bowed. I cannot follow orders that harm the innocent, the soldier said. I choose to stand with him. One by one, more soldiers lowered their weapons, stepped down from the ranks, voices joining. We will not harm the brave, we follow the human. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound shaking the arena, the city, the empire itself. The human's heart pounded, not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. He knew the empire would not give up easily. The emperor would strike again. Armies would move, spies would act. Yet in this moment, courage had spread like wildfire, and no force could contain it. The princess took a deep breath, her pride set aside. Father, look at them, she said, voice trembling but strong. The people, the soldiers, the citizens, they have chosen hope over fear. They see truth, they see courage, and they follow it. Emperor and LT Unk and GT, hands clenched into fists, his mind racing, realizing for the first time that his power was not absolute, that fear alone could not control the hearts of millions. The human raised his hand, a quiet signal, and the soldiers who had chosen his side formed a line, standing with him, shoulder to shoulder, ready to defend, not for conquest but for justice, for freedom, for the belief that one person could change the world. The princess joined, placing a hand on his shoulder, silently lending her strength, her support, and her belief. The emperor roared in rage, summoning the full force of his fleet, energy weapons charging, shields activating. The sky above the arena turned into a storm of light and fire, ready to strike down any who defied him. But the human did not move, did not falter. He only stood calm, focused, his eyes scanning the faces around him, seeing courage, hope, and determination shining in every gaze. Single thought ran through his mind, clear and unshakable. Courage is stronger than fear. Truth is stronger than lies. One person can change the world if they are brave enough to stand. The emperor unleashed the first wave of attack, massive energy beams streaking toward the arena, soldiers and citizens alike ducking for cover. Yet the human stepped forward, holding his ground. Brilliant light exploded from his hands, energy forming a protective barrier, reflecting the emperor's weapons. The princess gasped, awe and fear in her eyes. Soldiers who had joined him cheered, inspired their courage, strengthening the barrier. The human's power was not in magic or weaponry, but in his courage, in the belief that standing for truth could not fail. The emperor froze, seeing his weapons fail, his soldiers turn, his empire trembling. For the first time he felt fear, a deep, sinking fear, the realization that he could not crush a human who carried the hearts of millions. The arena shook, the sky lit with light, and the people of the empire began to rise, voices shouting freedom, courage. We followed. The human looked at the emperor one last time. Come. Unwavering, your power can destroy. Armies can conquer worlds, but it cannot conquer hearts. It cannot crush courage, nor can it silence hope. Today, you have lost, not because of weapons, but because of truth. The emperor turned, rage and disbelief mixing into silence, realizing the human had already won. The crowd erupted into cheers, soldiers dropping their weapons, citizens flooding the streets. The princess smiled, tears running down her face, finally understanding what true courage meant. The human had stood alone, yet he had united the empire not through fear but through hope, through courage, through defiance. And as the sun rose over the empire, painting the sky with gold and fire, the human stood tall, a symbol of bravery, a beacon for all. The empire would never be the same, for one human had proven that courage, truth, and heart could change the world, even in the face of unstoppable power. The human's journey had reached its climax, but the story of courage, of hope, and of standing for what is right would continue forever.